Good morning, chickadoes and chickadees. This video is the reading recording of In the Family by Maria Elena Llano. When my mother found out that the large mirror in the living room was inhabited, we all gradually went from disbelief to astonishment, and from this to a state of contemplation, ended up by accepting it as an everyday thing. The fact that the old spotted mirror reflected the dear departed in the family was not enough to upset our lifestyle. Following the old saying of let the house burn as long as no one sees the smoke, we kept this secret to ourselves since, after all, it was nobody's business. At any rate, some time went by before each one of us would feel absolutely comfortable about sitting down in our favorite chair and learning that in the mirror, that same chair was occupied by somebody else. For example, it could be Areria, my grandmother's sister, 1939, and even as cousin Natalie would be on my side of the room, across from her would be the almost forgotten Uncle Nicholas, 1927. As could have been expected, our departed reflected in the mirror presented the image of a family gathering almost identical to our own, since nothing, absolutely nothing in the living room, the furniture and its arrangement, the light, etc., was changed in the mirror. The only difference was that on the other side of it was them instead of us. All right, so what's going on here in the exposition is in the setup of what's going on is this particular mirror that lets you see your dead relatives. Okay, so in the mirror, you see the reflection of the room, your tables, your chairs, and when you sit down in your chair, and you look at yourself in the mirror, it's not your reflection that you see there, but it's the reflection of one of your dead relatives. It could be a dead grandmother, a dead grandfather, an aunt, uncle, anybody. It's just whoever's in the room, and they're in the reflection of the mirror, sitting down, standing up. When they look at their reflection in the mirror, they don't see themselves. It is a dead relative in their place. Nothing's changed about the room. The same decor, the same furniture, same placement. It's just if you're sitting in the chair, you're there, but in the reflection of the mirror, when you look at it, it could be one of your dead relatives. Kind of spooky, huh? I don't know about the others, but I sometimes feel that, more than a vision in the mirror, I was watching an old worn out movie, already clouded. The deceased efforts to copy our gestures were slower, restrained, as if the mirror were not truly showing a direct image, but the reflection of some other reflection. From the beginning, I knew that everything would get more complicated as soon as my cousin Clara came back from vacation. Because of her boldness and determination, Clara had long given me the impression that she had blundered into our family by mistake. This suspicion had been somewhat bolstered by her being one of the first women dentists in the country. However, the idea that she might have been with us by mistake went away as soon as my cousin hung up her diploma and started to embroider sheets beside my grandmother, aunts, and other cousins, waiting for a suitor who actually did show up but was found lacking in one respect or another. Nobody ever really found out why. All right, so what we have here is an introduction of a new character, the cousin Clara. She's just kind of like the family's black sheep. She's just a little different, doesn't kind of jive with the rest of the family. Feels like she's kind of like gotten by mistake, a baby switched at the hospital kind of mentality. She's just different. She just does things a little differently. She became the first woman dentist, so that gives us the inference that this is a story that takes place back in the day. We're looking at early 1900s, and um, she came back, and when she was living with them, she just kind of like settled down into everything they were doing, such as the embroidering sheets. It was just acting just like them. And she was never one to have a suitor. She would have the boyfriends, the guys come knocking, but for some reason they just didn't like her. They were turned away for one respect or another. They just didn't put a ring on it, so to speak. Once she graduated, Clara became the family oracle, even though she never practiced her profession. She would prescribe painkillers and was the arbiter of fashion. She would choose the theater shows and rule on whether the punch had the right amount of liquor at each social gathering. In view of all this, it was fitting that she take 1 month off every year to go to the beach. So kind of high and mighty mentality, in person in charge. That summer, when Clara returned from her vacation and learned about my grandmother's discovery, she remained pensive for a while, as if weighing the symptoms before issuing a diagnosis. Afterwards, without batting an eye, she leaned over the mirror and saw herself that it was true, and then tossed her head, seemingly accepting the situation. She immediately sat by the bookcase and craned her neck to see who was sitting in the chair on the other side. Gosh, look at Gus, was all she said. There, in the very same chair, the mirror showed us Gus, some sort of godson of Dad, who, after a flood in his hometown, came to live with us and remained there in the somewhat ambiguous character of adoptive poor relation. Clara greeted him amiably with a wave of a hand, but he seemed busy for the moment, with something like a radio tube, and did not pay attention to her. Undoubtedly, the mirror people weren't going out of their way to be sociable. This must have wounded Clara's self-esteem, although she did not let on. All right, so she took it for a test drive, really did see, hey, there is, you do see your dead relatives in this mirror, but for some reason they weren't mimicking, mirroring, reflecting her actions. They were doing something else, particular this Gus, this family friend, this godson that used to live with them, but has now passed away. He seemed to be busy with something else and not doing the exact same motions as Clara being on the opposite side of the mirror. Naturally, the idea of moving the mirror to the dining room was hers, and so it was the sequel to bring the mirror near the big table so we can all sit together for meals. In spite of my mother's fear that the mirror people would run away or get annoyed because of the fuss, everything went fine. I must admit, it was comforting to sit every day at the table and see so many familiar faces, although some of those from the other side were distant relatives, and others, due to lengthy, although unintentional absence, were almost strangers. There were about 20 of us sitting at the table every day, and even their gestures and movements seemed more remote than ours, and their meals a little washed out. We generally gave the impression of being a large family that got along well. All right, so Cousin Clara decided to move the mirror to the dining table area. So when they all sit down for dinner, it's them plus the relatives. So they said like 20 people. So that means there's 10 people sitting down for dinner, and there's 10 dead relatives in the mirror, and they're mimicking their actions. For a while, we ate all together without further incidents or problems. We mustn't forget Clara, however, whom we had allowed to sit at the frontier between the two tables, the equator separating what was from what was not. Although we paid no attention to the situation, we should have. Compounding our regrettable oversight was the fact that lethargic Eladia sat across from her, so that one night, with the same cordiality with which she addressed Gus, Clara asked Eladia to pass the salad. Eladia affected the haughty disdain of offended royalty as she passed the spectral salad bowl, filled with dull lettuce and grayish semi-transparent tomatoes, which Clara gobbled up, smiling mischievously at the novelty of it all. She watched us with the same defiance in her eyes that she had on the day she enrolled in the man's subject. There was no time to act. We just watched her grow pale, then her smile faded away until Clara collapsed against the mirror. All right, so Clara was sitting in a way where she was between like at the table and then the mirror behind her. So, being silly, she's just kind of like show her dominance, show her power. So she asked the dead relative, hey, pass me that salad, pass me some food, like kind of playing around, messing around with the dead relatives. The dead relatives didn't think it was funny, kind of pissed off, but still gave her the food, like, here, have the salad. Clara gets it, somehow gets it again. We have that spectral ghost story mentality here. Eats the salad, and she has this look in her eyes like, ha 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 ha, I'm in charge, I'm in power. You can't tell me what to do, I get my way all the time. And as she's eating the salad, her complexion changes, her demeanor changes. It says that we watched her grow pale, then her smile faded away until Clara finally collapsed against the mirror. So something happened to her. Once the funeral business was over and we sat back down at the table again, we saw that Clara had taken a place on the other side. She was between cousin Balthazar, 1940, and a great uncle whom we simply called Ito. This faux pas dampened our conviviality somewhat. In a way, we felt betrayed. We felt that they had grievously abused our hospitality. However, we ended up divided over the question of who was really whose guest. It was also plain that our carelessness and Clara's irrepressible inquisitiveness had contributed to the mishap. In fact, a short time later, we realized that there wasn't a great deal of difference between what Clara did before and what she was doing now, and we decided to look over the incident and get on with things. Nevertheless, each day we became less and less sure about which side was life and which its reflection, and as one bad step leads to another, I ended up taking Clara's empty space. I am now much closer to them. I can almost hear the distant rustle of the folding and unfolding of napkins, the slight clinking of glasses and cutlery, the movement of chairs. The fact is that I can't tell if these sounds come from them or from us. I'm obviously not worried about clearing that up. What really troubles me, though, is that Clara doesn't seem to behave properly, with either the solemnity or with the opacity owed to her new position. I don't know how to put it. Even worse, the problem is that I, more than anybody else in the family, may become the target of Clara's machinations, since we were always joined by a very special affection, perhaps because we were the same age and had shared the same children's games and the first anxieties of adolescence. As it happens, she is doing her best to get my attention, and ever since last Monday, she's been waiting for me to slip up so she can pass me a pineapple this big, immediately a little bleached out, but just right for making juice, and also a bit sour, just as she knows I like it. All right, so Clara died. She was messing around, kind of being disrespectful to the dead, and by taking the food from the dearly departed that are in the mirror, she dies. Now she's on the other side. Now she's with the dead relatives, and she's still not behaving. She still messes around. She still tries to be all high and mighty, tries to order things around. And now our narrator, this woman, is telling us like she doesn't know reality. She doesn't know if this what she's in is real or what's going on in the mirror is real. She's kind of bent between two worlds, and they keep blending together. And it seems that Clara is being silly and keeps trying to get our our narrator to eat the spectral food, the dearly departed's food from the mirror, so that she can go join them. Kind of creepy, huh? Imagine that happening in your mirror, seeing someone who's passed on in it, and they're trying to get you to the other side. All right, so this is your short story. Please be sure to do the assignment for today. Love you. Have a good day. Bye bye.